Oh, I'm having so much fun working on the Arabella Block of the Month by Winging a Prayer with all of you. Are you ready to do block number 2? Let's get stitching. Well, welcome back to another awesome episode of So Well with Rob Appell, yours truly here at Stitchin Heaven, here in Quitman, Texas, on YouTube, having a blast. And this is this wonderful program I am now sewing with all of you on called Arabella. It's a block of the month program created by Winging a Prayer Designs, and it is absolutely incredible. Now, I've got several hundred of you sewing along with me, and this is awesome. Many of you are working from the pre-cut kits you've gotten from Stitchin Heaven. Some of you have the cut your own kits. Either way, super fun. I'm working with Cut Your Own, and in the first month, I started talking about some of the tricks I learned from Tony and Jenny themselves on cutting accurately to get a more improved patchwork precision in this project. That's what I'm personally treating myself to in this quilt, is improving my precision. And folks, I will tell you, the good thing about block number 2 is we're making 4, and my first version is not perfectly accurate, but I've got a great feeling because all my pieces look really good so far, that if I just slow down and focus a little bit better, that by the time I get that 4th one done, it will be better than the first one. And isn't that the cool thing about quilting, is we can always be improving as we go. So you are not required to sew accurately. You have plenty of fabric and the instructions are fantastic, but that's what I'm treating myself to because I really want to improve my precision this year. The rotating cutting mat's going to be helpful. I'm using a splice, what is this thing called? The Clearly Perfect Slotted Trimmer. That's going to be helpful a little bit in case you don't have it. Of course, we've got our pattern, and as I dive in, I'm going to have my general information, my cutting instructions, because we're going to be making some flying geese today. So in this section right here, step 3, the flying geese, there's a really cool method that I used in this project that I had never tried before because Tony was encouraging me to try it, and it worked beautifully. Thanks again, Tony. It really helps reduce some of the bulk up here in this section, right up here. It's just really nice and flat. So I will be teaching you all how to work on that today, but the information is again right here in your general instructions. Have your color keyed handy in case you haven't quite memorized the fabrics. What I'm really liking is here in our instructions with the color code, these are intentionally printed and used throughout. They're always the same black and white or the grayscale version of the colors. So this is really important, and Tony promised me by the 3rd month I would already start to see the pattern best in black and white. And by the end of working today, I'm already starting to translate and using these black or these grayscale fabrics in the pattern reference. Where did I put my pattern today? Oh, there it is. These here, and that way I'm confirming that I have the right fabrics in the right the right side of this really cool fern print. This fern print, like again, check it out, folks. This is the actual fabric 5 from the original quilt, okay? But this one has a very detailed or very definitive way that some of you that don't know how to read a batik for right sides, wrong sides, and most of them don't matter. Most of them don't matter. But look, on the back side, you can see here, this is much more muddy, much more gray. There's a lot less detail or less crispness. Maybe that's the best word I can say. There's less crispness in this one. So when I'm working with batiks, once I can really determine there is a definitive right side, I will be looking for that. So this is one thing I will point out in this fabric here. The rest of the fabrics really don't register as a true wrong side, right side, but this fabric here, number 5, I found was a good thing I could teach you all this month as we're sewing together, which is so fun. Okay, so let me grab our pattern and let's just get started here as we go through. As a reminder, here's our block that we're making. It's going to finish at 12.5 inches square. It's called the Light and Dark Star, which I think, or excuse me, Dark Light Star, which is really, really cool. I guess I like Dark Star better because I'm a Grateful Dead fan. Anyways, if you know what I'm talking about. Now, as a reminder here, we're making 4 of them today, so you'll get a little bit of extra practice. Here is the block. Here is the assembly with the borders going onto the block. Here's our cutting instructions. So last month we cut a couple of our squares in half to create triangles for half square triangles. Now we're going to divide some up differently here. So let me show you how to do that before we get any further. I'm now using my fabric number 2, and this is my large square, and this is where I find that something like the rotating mat is super handy, because what the trick is not to move the fabric after you make your first cut. So find yourself a ruler that is longer than your fabric and lay it here from corner to corner. Make sure it's real nice corner to corner there. And then make your first cut, that first diagonal cut all the way through, and resist the desire to move your fabric to check to make sure you have a good cut. You should always have a sharp blade knowing you're gonna make a good cut. Now rotate your mat half turn, right? And then here's the trick. Peel up your ruler so your fabric doesn't move at all, and then set it down on your top corner. It's like putting a screensaver on a new cell phone, right? And then just find it here, find that bottom corner there, and everybody in the house always has me do that because I love doing it so much. And now when you cut through here, we should have perfect 4 triangles, okay? And that's that diagram here. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to fabric 5, but we're doing the same cutting for fabric 2 as well. So you're gonna see you'll do it for fabric 2, fabric 5, and fabric 9, and those are actually parts that will be used down the road. I believe are going to be our bases for some of our flying geese. So let's go ahead and set these aside for now. But the first thing we're making in our pattern is the half square triangles. Today we're going to have 3 different versions of the same size, and then we're going to have one of the larger size. So remember, your key here, A, is the letter of the unit, right? It tells us we're going to need to make 8 of these here, and then it tells us to use fabrics 8 and 9. So that's what these are going to look like down here, okay? So let's go ahead and make one of those just to begin with, just to walk you through it. It's fun. You're here. Let's have fun sewing together. I've drawn a diagonal line. I'm going to come on over here to my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you'll notice I'm not using an edge guide. I'm really relying on my foot for this project, helping me really get comfortable with my machine. And I'm putting that foot right on that chalk line. Now, of course, the cutting and sewing instructions are for all 4 blocks. I've gotten myself a little ahead so I can teach you how to do this, but when I was doing it, I was sewing all of the pieces. So chain piecing down one side of all the half square triangles to be, and then I cut my threads and I come back over and I'm going to go down the other side of the block, but looking at that chalk line kind of on the same right-hand side of the foot there. So again, whether it's a small one or the big one, so here's our combination for combo D, right, using fabrics 3 and 7. So I've got them right sides together. I've got a chalk line on here as well. So regardless of the size, it's going to be the same technique. And this again is kind of considered chain piecing, right? I just didn't want to confuse y'all. I snuck in some Texas on you though, didn't I? Okay, so again, down one side, cut thread, set this aside, and we're just going to finish out this large half square triangle now. We're going to need them both as we work through the video, so let's talk about trimming these. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here, and the first step I want to do, and this is going to be kind of depending on what style trimmer you use next. So I'm going to talk about slotted trimmers today. So I'm going to first cut, and I'm not going to press. I want these still folded for the slotted trimmers. So I'm just cutting that diagonal to diagonal, somewhat on the chalk line. Okay, but we're going to trim these down considerably, and that's one of the things I love about the way the pattern's written. It has a nice, easy to cut, larger cut, and then we're going to trim these down, like trim them down so much that I checked to make sure I was paying attention how much we're trimming these down. So at any rate, yes, we're making these small half square triangles now to 2.5, and with my 2.5, and Tony, thank you, I thought this through when we were talking. The thread matters, folks, and the thicker the thread, the more it's going to matter in that seam allowance, right? So if we're really shooting for an exact 2.5-inch half square triangle, what I'm learning now to do, even with my slotted trimmer where I would normally be putting my dotted line right on my threads, I'm putting the dotted line into the triangle. So I'm actually creating a bigger, slightly by a thread cut, so that hopefully then when I get over to my ironing surface, that will afford me the extra as I press over, because I mentioned that I am using the 40 weight, the little heavier threads. Oh, dog ear your corners, by the way, as we go. So again, just finding that, putting my dotted line just a little bit north of that actual thread. Slow down so you have all your fingers at the end of your project. And for me, folks, I found that, I don't know if it's my eyesight or whatnot, but the slotted trimmer has these slots in them, but I really struggle personally to get that slotted trimmer in there and feel safe. So you saw me a moment ago just kind of eyeballing it, and that's also working, but that might be where some of that problem with accuracy is coming in. Let's double check our pattern here to find out that yes, the D, those are going to trim down to 4.5. So again, an ample amount, find that other line, that 4.5, still go north, but you can see I've got a considerable amount to trim off here with those half square triangles, so that's really cool. And if it slips at all, like you just saw mine happen, just recalibrate and go ahead and do that. And then, like I said, I'm kind of eyeballing my corners because I've done this 1.5 million times. And whenever I'm working through patterns like this, I really like to do each and every step as I can as I go, because that helps me to stay accurate and making sure I'm paying attention to the same line over and over again on all my tools. It really is helpful. At this moment, even if you have 1 million of these pieces, go ahead and press them over to your darker fabrics. So light fabrics on your ironing surface, your wool mat, and then dark fabrics up in the air. Press over. With the wool mat, you can let the iron sit there for a few minutes, and that really helps. It acts kind of like a clapper. The heat and the weight really are a great benefit that way. And then you just keep reorganizing your stack. And I even like to stack all of my half square triangles in the same direction, so that as I follow the pattern, and this pattern is very formulaic, or it's the same. So it's just really easy to go through and do that. It's wonderful. Okay, now folks, let's do these wonderful flying geese, because the flying geese is super cool, and I promised you I learned something that I really love here. So again, making sure you're going to go right sides together, we want to do these by sewing on the right side of the triangle to the base. This is a no waste method. It's really cool, and for accuracy, what I want you to do is I want you to line up the tip first, the bottom straight edge, and the outer straight edge of the right side of the base with that triangle. Go ahead and do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or your scant quarter if that's what you're doing with this project. It's probably where I'm running to count for the threads. And here is the trick. So if you've listened to nothing else yet, listen to this. Of course, I don't know how you'd hear me say listen to this, but okay. So for the first piece, we're going to press into the base. We're going to press into the larger of the two triangles. And I've always taught you to do it the other way before. So again, pressing into the base, where did you go? Into that larger triangle before you set your second piece on. No trimming yet, okay? Now come in here, same thing, right sides together, find your corner, hold that down, lay down your flat edge, come on over to the machine again, and of course you could be doing this chain format. You have 8 of each to do. That's how I did mine. I put all the right sides on first, press them to the bases, put all the left sides on, and then when I came off of here, and I'm sorry, I didn't see this in the instructions, Tony, so I think you told me this, but I'm not seeing it. But anyways, I found that if I came off right now and I trimmed off the under edge, okay, you can see it's not going to be used, and then as we go press, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Oh, and the second time we're pressing away from the base, we're pressing into the triangle, the new piece we just stitched on. So regardless of color, regardless of density, anything like that, So now I've pressed into this unit. Now we're going to go ahead and trim these down. And this is what is going to help us really with accuracy. And we've, again, got plenty of fabric to work with, but this is our first steps to this trimming. I want to make sure I'm affording myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this point so that my points can really show up beautifully in my stars. So let's go ahead and trim to that piece to set our baseline. So I'm going to find a 1/4 inch mark on my ruler that I can actually read. And I'm dropping that 1/4 inch mark on here. And now I'm kind of checking my surroundings. Is it square? Does it look nice? Perfect, because that'll make sure that my triangle stays relatively square inside. So the first trim is here, okay? And it's real easy just to rotate your mat. And now I'm going to move the ruler over, and I need a 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch when I'm done. So again, I'm coming through here. Now I'm at 2.5 inches, and I'm not worrying so much are these edges square, just the line I just cut. Now I square that, okay? So now I'm at perfect 2.5. Now here's the trick. To get the 4.5 you want, take your ruler and make sure you've gone past your 4.5 mark. Then, sorry folks, this is just some math you should be able to do, but this is what I like about quilting also. Find 2.25. 2.25 is half of 4.5. Put that 2.25 mark that you can see on the tip of your triangle, and then just make sure your base of your ruler, let me see if I can get you a real nice picture of that with that overhead there. Line that up. Now I've got a perfectly straight line there, a perfectly straight line up here, and now I can trim my first cut, rotate again, and do a 4.5 inch by 2.5 inch perfect with that centered just nice. Now there are other tools out there that work. This is what I have. And as laborious as I felt like that was going to be, and maybe even made it sound in today's video, I blasted through all 24 of these in next to no time flat. Trimming them is paramount for this accuracy, especially because they're made a little bit large. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I love how we no longer have the bulk up here. It really makes things beautiful. So let's go ahead and tidy up. And now, because we have all of our parts and pieces ready for the build out, we can start assembling the units together to make out our dark white star. So following our instructions, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to now make, which actually becomes kind of the bottom and side edges, which are our like flying geese borders. So we're going to need one of these combinations here. As you can see, it's our dark, our colors 8 and 9 if I remember correctly. So you're going to want 2 of those for every block. Okay, now all you're going to do is match the same fabrics from your pile of your half square triangles and make sure that the fabrics are running in the same orientation. So here I've got my, let's call it green for lack of better, pointing up, green pointing up, green pointing up, just like the pattern calls for. Okay, and it's asking me to do it the same way for the other side. So while we're looking at it right now, we're going to go ahead and make both of these exactly the same. We'll add on these corner units here in a second. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and fold it over and sew with a 1/4 inch. And this is where you want to use your 1/4 inch accurate and or your scant 1/4 inch, depending on how thick your thread is. Maybe an edge guide at this point would be helpful. You can go chain piece style, or you can do both half square triangles to the flying geese, because the instructions are going to talk about which way we're going to iron for better nesting later on. Let's not get carried away and lose our orientation. So as I'm coming over here, again, pointing out I haven't gone to the iron yet, because we're going to do all the ironing once this is constructed. Same thing, check orientation. And now what it's going to do is tell us to press 4 chunks in to the right and 4 chunks to the left. The ones that go to the right are for our sides, and the ones that go to the left are for the bottom of our units. And so at any rate, that's just going to help for pressing. So when they say press to the right, I've got my points up again. And so for right now, going to the right, holding it in the air, coming across, 1, and to the other. Let your iron sit on there for a second. Okay, and so if that one was, like I said, to the right, that one's going to be for the sides. So now I've just kind of gotten into the habit of rotating them to begin with, and then I'll make this one down here to the left for the bottom. So now our key is following just the orientation here, is we're going to come up to our solid square pile, and with fabric number 9, I'm going to grab a solid square and just stitch that on right now so I don't lose my orientation. Following the ironing direction from the pieces we just did. Okay, and our last is going to be the one that uses our lightest and our darkest half square triangle combo, just as you see it. But note that the green points are still pointing in the same direction so that it all has that same read on it as you go ahead and stitch that on, again with that accurate 1/4 inch. Pressing again in the same direction so they're all heading down. So this one's actually going to press into the new lighter one. And we've built our outside borders already. So now we can go ahead and look at the entire orientation of our project. Now please note, folks, in this diagram and this diagram, the light and dark have rotated. So I'm going to kind of really use this diagram up here, even though this one here is next in the order on the instructions. So take one of your largest half square triangle unit and rotate it so the dark is pointing into the left bottom corner. Okay, these are borders, so these sit outside there. Then you're going to take your flying geese units here that have the darkest, see this dark feel? Oh, and look, I've even moved my block. I'm sorry, let's do this. I didn't even pay attention to the whole video. Okay, so now we're going to point out on the bottom and on this left-hand side. We're going to put in the matching base fabric as a solid unit here, okay? That eventually will come down into this area. We need the light combos for the top and the sides there, okay? Put your lightest fabric number 2 between your 2 light flying geese. And then these pieces here are going to fill in again with these same light dark combos, okay? So if you look down in this bottom corner here, oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, folks. Using the one that has the background base fabric. Okay, and I want to make sure I put that in correctly. So triangles are pointing. See that? Triangles are pointing. So that's our interior center star. Now, construction is very simple, but it doesn't mean we should rush. We're going to go and match up so we get a really nice point there. So fold over, right sides together. Using your 1/4 inch seam allowance, you should be able to land. Remember, we trimmed right to a 1/4 inch. So as we come down now, I'm shooting to get my threads right into that cross. Listen. Did you hear it? It thunk thunk. That means I got it all but perfect. Let's cut thread and check that. Oh my gosh, look at that. Okay, so now, and I don't need to press yet, but I do want to make sure I've got my orientation correct. I'm going to go ahead here, grab this, rotate it over, And do the same thing, ensuring that I hit that, did you hear it, that point? Okay, now it talks about pressing the middle from light, we're going to say, to dark. I'm hitting it with a bit of steam to let it settle in. And I'm going to drop it right back on location. Okay? Now, join your half square triangles to the flying geese. But what I'm doing now is I'm going to sew on both sides to each flying goose so that I keep my flock in the right order. So I'm going to thread cut, confirm, grab the other, match it up. Okay, so now I'm going to press, oops, this direction. So from my solid square, lay it down, check your orientation, right sides together. Okay, and these ones are running this way, so again, I'm going to be able to press towards that solid square. And as I begin to sew these to the center unit, I have that other point I want to watch for. Same thing. So now I'm going to match up the seam allowances and the point. That's why we've been pressing to nest. We can do a little adjusting. This is one of the reasons why I don't do anything other than kind of pinching for my pinning. Looking for that next union right here. Hopefully you can see it. Oh, I think I got it. Coming down here now to ensure that I've got that seam connected nicely. I will take the time to press now, away from center. So far, so good. Now we're going to go ahead and sew on the bottom row. That's an ugly seam. Doesn't mean it won't keep us warm. Look for that cross. Got it? Look for your nest down there. I didn't do the best job ironing that one. Okay. So we now have our center build out down. Looking at it right here again. Now we're going to go ahead and quickly grab for our borders 2 of our rectangles, checking just to see if there's an obvious right side or not. And really we can now immediately sew our dark flying goose row to our dark side. Looking for that cross, matching up your seams. It's really business as usual. Of course, this side's super easy, right? Because it's a nice solid rectangle. So just match up your top corner. Now we're going to, again, press away from center. And we're going to add or start building on the outer rows with our cornerstones, where we have these last little corner pieces that fill in. So that's why we put on our short sides first. So we can now come back in for the long sides. Okay. So this one we've already built. This one here, it's going to match up. So this is where we use our lightest and our darkest again with our dark pointing. See your triangles, just matching that up. And then on this one, another super simple sew, which is your fabric number, what is this, number 1 to fabric number 2. Okay, so that's going to match up there. So we need to build this one first. Paying attention to your orientation. And because I pressed into the outer borders, now we're going to press from our cornerstones in, just to help align a little bit. It's easy. Cornerstone in, cornerstone in. Grab that, match it up. And then that first union is that nice seam allowance there that are nested against each other. Check your top corner. And then now I'm just holding my bottom nested seams together to help ensure accuracy. We're just going to sew all the way down. Okay, we're going to press away. And I will confirm this one's already looking better than the first one. So I might not even have to wait till I get to the fourth one to make them look awesome. Hopefully neither will you. Okay, put on our last row for the day. Such a great project. Now I've got a little bit more bulk and a little bit more seams down here, and I've got a flying goose I can catch. Did you see that? So always looking for that when we can. Seams there, seams here, really helps. And that's the end of our sewing on this block. Now of course you get to make your 4, but I'm also just going to press this to that outer edge there. Let a little steam settle it in. And show that off. Okay, let's see. Orientation is correct so that I've got now my dark here, light here, just like it shows you in your pattern. This is, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, it's going to finish at 12.5 by 12.5 inches square this way. I've got 1, I've got 2, I've got the parts for 3 and 4, and I will see you all next month for Arabella Block of the Month number 3. Should be about a month from now. We're trying to get these up on the 3rd Wednesday of each month for you all as you're participating and sewing along with us with our Block of the Month program. One of the things I would love to know from you, I know many of you sew on a lot of our different Block of the Month, so what's the next one that maybe I should consider trying to sew along with all of you? What are you into? What are you interested in? What Block of the Months from Stitchin Heaven do you love? Let us know in the comments below, and I will see you definitely for block number 3 in about a month and other great tutorials in between times. Until then, folks, please stay well and thanks for being here. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.